Welcome to this explainer. We see that familiar green logo on literally almost every street corner today. But how did a humble little Seattle storefront selling roasted beans and spices completely change the way the entire world views and consumes coffee? Well, the journey from a single local shop to an absolute icon of corporate success wasn't exactly a straight line. So today, we're going to look at the anatomy of that transformation. We'll unpack the surprising pivots, the alternate histories, and the brilliant business strategies that built a global empire. Okay, let's kick things off with a slightly amusing alternate reality. Imagine waking up, grabbing your keys, and telling a friend, "Hey, I'm going to make a quick stop at Pegwad for a morning brew." Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue the same way, does it? But honestly, this was incredibly close to being our reality. When the company was founded back on March 30th, 1971, the founders were hunting for a brand identity that would really resonate, and they actually turned to literature, specifically Herman Melville's classic novel, Moby-Dick. They originally wanted to name their store after the famous doomed whaling ship from the book, the Pequod. So that whole nautical mythology theme, that was proposed by the three original founders, Gordon Bowker, Jerry Baldwin, and Zev Siegl. They were friends from the University of San Francisco who had actually been instructed in the art of coffee roasting by Alfred Peets, yes, of Peet's Coffee. When it came to their own branding, they were absolutely dead set on this maritime concept, and the name Pequod was actually the strongest contender. But thankfully, they realized the irony of naming a hopeful, growing business after a ship that was literally destined to sink. So they dodged that bullet and pivoted slightly, keeping it within the exact same novel. Instead of the ship, they looked to the ship's first mate. His name? Starbuck. And just like that, Starbucks narrowly pipped the second-place contender, and a legendary brand name was born. Now, it wasn't just the name that went through a fascinating evolutionary process, it was the visual identity, too. We all know that highly stylized signature green mermaid today, right? But the very first logo they commissioned back in '71 was completely different. For starters, it was brown, not green. And the siren herself was depicted in a much more anatomically detailed, historically inspired woodcut style. It was a very rustic, kind of earthy look. And honestly, that design perfectly matched their original business model, which, believe it or not, was not about pouring you a quick cup of coffee on your commute. Section 2. The original 1971 Starbucks, spices, beans, and a humble start. So, if we completely dismantle our modern perception and virtually walk into that original store in 1971, you couldn't actually order a brewed latte. No cappuccinos, no frappuccinos. Their mission was purely to sell freshly roasted whole bean coffee, loose leaf tea, and spices. It was basically a supplier for homebrewing, not a cafe. And while everyone associates the original Starbucks with Pike Place Market in downtown Seattle, its very first location was actually at 2000 Western Avenue. It operated there for its first 5 years, and it wasn't until 1976 that it relocated to the now famous 1912 Pike Place address. Jumping way forward to 2022, this historic location became the centerpiece of what Starbucks calls the Heritage Market, a collection of 3 specific hometown stores designed to really showcase the past, present, and future of the company's roots. Section 3. The leadership molecule, recreating the paradigm. To really understand how we got from a single shop selling bags of whole beans to the laptop-filled cafes of today, we have to look away from the original founders and look toward the transformers. We're talking about a monumental strategic shift that turned coffee from a cheap daily commodity into a premium experiential brand. And this transformation didn't happen by accident. It was driven by what's called a core leadership molecule. This strategic triad consisted of Howard Schultz along with his close associates Orrin Smith and Howard Bihar. Think of this management team as the key architects behind a massive retail revolution. They were the absolute engine behind differentiating Starbucks from literally every other competitor on the market. They didn't just tweak the business, they entirely reimagined what a coffee company could be in the modern world. Howard Schultz, who became the leader of Starbucks, had a strategic vision that went way, way beyond just building a national retail chain. He explicitly stated his goal was to recreate the paradigm. He wanted to transform coffee from a basic commodity product, something you just bought in a big tin at the grocery store, into a truly exquisite product with immense brand equity. But most importantly, he envisioned creating a third place between work and home. This single concept, a comfortable, welcoming environment that wasn't your office and wasn't your living room, is arguably the most important paradigm shift they achieved, completely reshaping consumer habits across the globe. And wow, did that strategic vision pay off? The company expanded to over 8,000 stores globally during its major growth phase, becoming totally synonymous with the term worldwide brand. To give you an idea of the sheer absurd density of this expansion, at one point, Starbucks had more stores just in the state of California than all of its major competitors combined. Think about that for a second. They executed Schultz's vision of recreating the paradigm with absolute, overwhelming precision.
Section 4. Honoring the Heritage, the 1971 Roast and Historic Preservation.
All right, let's bring this massive, high-level global business strategy back down to the actual cup of coffee. Because as huge as Starbucks has become, it still places a really heavy emphasis on honoring its Seattle roots today, essentially bridging the gap between its origins as an independent roaster and its current status as a corporate titan. If you visit the Pike Place store today, you'll notice it still retains its early rustic appearance. It operates under incredibly strict design guidelines to maintain its historic significance. It serves as a major tourist attraction, naturally, drawing crowds of people who want to stand where it all essentially began. As part of that heritage market concept we touched on earlier, it stands as a physical testament to the company's journey, a way of making sure the modern empire doesn't completely overwrite its humble beginnings. And they honor this history through their actual coffee, too. With over 5 decades of passion behind them, Starbucks coffee experts and master roasters created the 1971 Dark Roast. To honor that history, they intentionally crafted a blend from the exact same high-quality Arabica beans they sourced on day one. It features beans from Colombia, Sumatra, and Brazil. The resulting cup brings out these incredibly bold, complex flavors with specific tasting notes of toasted sugar and rich walnut. It's specifically designed to harken back to their beginnings as a small, independent roaster focused purely on the bean itself.
But here's the catch. This historical homage is still served with absolute modern efficiency. You aren't buying it out of a burlap sack, you're ordering it in their globally standardized tall, grande, or venti cups. It's a fascinating synthesis, really, taking their rustic roots and scaling them up to a modern empire's highly structured menu.
And here is a striking contrast to think about. While modern Starbucks profits are, as we know, heavily driven by sugary, whipped cream-topped frappuccinos, a standard cup of this featured 1971 dark roast coffee contains 0 grams of sugar, 0 grams of fat, and only 5 calories. Just 5. It's a bold, rich, pure coffee experience completely devoid of the heavy additives that define so much of their contemporary menu.
So, as we reflect on this incredible journey, we see how Starbucks took something as ordinary as a coffee bean and transformed it into a worldwide cultural cornerstone. All of it driven by a brilliant leadership molecule and a vision to recreate an entire paradigm. It leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. If a small bean shop in Seattle could revolutionize our daily routine and reshape global culture to this extent, what ordinary, everyday commodity is out there right now, just waiting for the next great paradigm shift? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes open for the next big transformation.